Welcome back. So this is continuing the review from test number 1 for fall 21. And I know I said I would do the comparison questions next, but then I figured out how I could cover the short answer questions next. Sorry that the images aren't all that strong. I didn't have a copy of the digital file, so I had to just take photos with my phone. So here we go. So for the short answer questions, 3 major Paleolithic cave sites, Altamira, Lascaux, and of course Chauvet, which is the one that we talked the most about. Altamira is the one we really didn't discuss much at all. I think maybe you saw one image from it. Drawings where the artist does not look at the page are called, that's a blind contour. When casting bronze, the material wax needs to fill the space between the 2 layers of the plaster cast, so it occupies the space that the bronze will occupy. It will melt away when the molten bronze is poured in. Now, it is true also that in some forms of lost wax methods, the wax is melted away before the bronze is put in, and in some forms, the molten bronze itself actually melts the wax. A lot of it kind of depends on scale. But there you go. Earliest Mesopotamian city-states were of what ancient culture? The answer to that is Sumerian, Sumerian. That's with 1 M. I always misspell it, so I wouldn't be upset if you had. I usually put 2 M's in there, but it's with 1. There are basically 3 types of clay body: earthenware, stoneware, and porcelain. I put the word basically in there because, as you remember from the lecture, we actually talked about that there are really an infinite number of types of clay bodies, various combinations, but the 3 main categories generally that most clay bodies fall into are earthenware, stoneware, and porcelain. Okay, of the multiple choice questions, let's see, second firing of a clay pot. That's a bit of a trick question because in a lot of the in the homework question, it was asking what the first firing was called, not the second firing. The first firing is the bisque, but the second firing is the glaze firing. Okay, if you put bisque firing down, or if you put C, kilned, you would have gotten partial credit. The type of drawing where the artist works quickly and energetically in order to see the whole, that is gesture. But I would have put partial credit either for blind contour or cross contour. A Greek ceramic vessel used for holding wine, as well as a prize for athletic contests, includes wide shoulders, narrow neck, double handles, is E amphora. I would give you partial credit if you'd put D crater. The time period that is described as Greek-like and involves spreading of Greek culture around the Mediterranean, that is Hellenistic, but I would have given you partial credit for D, Hellenic, or B, which is A and D. I hadn't even noticed that one there. And 5, recorded history of Egypt begins with the unification of A, Upper and Lower Egypt. And so, and you may notice I do give partial credit. I consider, even when it's a mistake, I consider how close to the correct answer you were, or how much it shows at least some understanding. I don't think we have to go over the matching definitions all that much because everyone got it right, but let's just very quickly make sure. So starting with 1, contour, that is D, a line or in a drawing or other works of art that describes the edge of a form. 2, kiln, that would be F, a furnace or oven that is used for firing ceramics. 3, Mesopotamia would be E, region in the Middle East, lies between the Tigris and the Euphrates. 4, Paleolithic would be A, means Old Stone Age. 5, silver point would be C, a drawing technique that uses sharpened stylus made of metal. And 6, coil building would be B, a hand building technique. Now on to the longer definitions. So 1 to 2 sentences to define a negative shape. A negative shape would be any shape in a work of art that reads as part of the negative space or the ground to the figure, so that it reads as further back. as opposed to a positive shape. Another way to define it is negative shapes are the shapes created by the space between positive shapes. Okay, line weight. I specifically was looking for changes in line, right, that create light or dark. And these changes of line include both changes in pressure, right, changes in thickness of the line, and the changes in value of the line. If you got all of those, I believe you almost certainly would have gotten full credit. And most people did pretty well. I think they were worth 2 points, and most people either got full credit or just a half a point off, which is pretty good. Okay, we're going to skip the essay questions and the matching comparison questions for a second, just to talk about the drawing part of the test where you had to draw out some ideas. So here I drew out some ideas to kind of show you, first of all, 2 ways to create implied line. These are all kind of related ideas, but they're each to a degree different, right? From a line made up of dots to a line made up of dashes to a line made up of circles to apples, right? Anything in a grouping grouped into a line can make a line. And then also, but it doesn't even have to be like repetition of a thing. It could be like the edge of a set of shapes. So it's not so much the center of these shapes that makes the line, it's the edge along there that continues the line. But then another completely different way would be in the kind of the pointing way of creating an implied line, such as an arrow shape or a triangle, and then something being the thing that your eye is going to. Here's another option where there's an implied line between those 2 eyes looking at each other. Okay, 2, draw 3 ways to create implied shapes. I did a number of different ways, and I would count each of these as being a different idea, right? And there's still a few more that I hadn't done, right? You could have done this, actually combining this with this, where it was vertical lines, and then the outside of the triangle was horizontal lines, so that there was no real change in the value of the triangle. There was only a change in the texture and the direction of mark. This kind of simple grouping system, also another way to make a triangle, or just letting our eye fill in the gaps this kind of way, or taking the implied negative shape idea and this kind of idea and going all the way to kind of an invisible triangle in the center like that. And then lastly, use 2 different ways of using line to create value. And this is, well, you could say 3 ways. I mean, primarily, the main way here is change of line weight, right? That the line weight does not stay constant. It gets darker in places in terms of just the outside contour. There is also some change of line weight in terms of these hatching marks. We could talk about that in a second. And then the other main way is just through repetition of marks building up, so that having lines and lines and lines and lines creates value. And so there are a few places where it's just a single direction of a line, like in the background here or on this part of the banana right up there. But a lot of areas are multiple directions, what we would call cross hatching, right? Hatching is a single direction. Cross hatching, it's multiple directions. And so, yeah, I guess technically in mind that would be probably 4 different ways, in that you see change of line weight in one kind of continuous line. You see change of line weight in terms of some of these hatching marks. Some are a little bit lighter, some are darker. So you can see that then as a difference, a different kind of way. Then on top of that, you have change of, through repetition of density of mark making, both in terms of a continuous direction as well as crossing different directions. Okay, that's the end of the short answer part of the test. Next, the last video will be on the comparison questions, and no, that won't be the last part. The comparison questions and the essay, and then the final part will be on the extra credit portion. Okay, thank you.